Have you just set up your vSRX in Hyper-V or ESXi, but now you want to set up a complex topology but don't know how? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do in this episode of Show Version 6. We're going to be taking a look at our vSRXs that we set up in ESXi and also in Microsoft Hyper-V and see how we can set them up into a complex topology. Now, we're only going to be working with 3 vSRXs just in the interest of time, but this should give you plenty of information to be able to set up a much larger or more complex topology if you wish. So let's go over to the computer and take a look at what we got. Alright, so this is the topology that we're going to be setting up. We have 3 routers, vSRX 1, 2, and 3, and we want to set them up into OSPF area 0. GE000 connects vSRX 1 and 2, 001 connects 2 and 3, and 001 on SRX 1 connects to 000 on SRX 3. And this is what we want to set up. So let's first jump over to Hyper-V and see how we can do that. So we have our vSRX 1 through 3 already turned on and ready to go here. Now, the thing we'll need to do is to go into our virtual switch manager. So in Hyper-V, we'll need to create a separate virtual switch for each of our point-to-point links that we want to connect. That will ensure that we don't have any overlapping traffic and any unexpected behavior of interfaces receiving traffic that they shouldn't, right? I like to create virtual switches with the names of the 2 devices that they'll be connecting. We'll delete these old ones here so that we can create some new. First, we'll go to New Virtual Switch, and we have 3 options: external, internal, and private. External will connect the virtual switch to our external network, the physical network adapter that's on our Hyper-V host. Internal will connect our VM that we're running in Hyper-V to the physical host, to the machine that's running Hyper-V, and also to any VMs that are connected to the virtual switch. This is getting closer to what we want here. But the last one of private, this will only connect our VM in Hyper-V to any other VMs that are connected to the virtual switch in Hyper-V. That is what we want to connect our point-to-point links between our vSRXs. So let's create a private switch. Our first one will connect vSRX 1 to vSRX 2. And we'll just set that there. And then we'll create another one, a new private. And this one will connect vSRX 1 to vSRX 3. And then we'll connect one more that will be vSRX 2 to vSRX 3. And there we go. We just click apply and let Hyper-V create those 3 new virtual switches. And there we go. So now we click OK, and we can go into the settings of each of our vSRXs. Now, you might recall that previously, when we discussed creating our vSRXs in Hyper-V and ESXi, that our network adapters that we connect, each successive network adapter that we connect will be the next physical interface in our vSRX. So the first network adapter will be our FXP0 interface, our management interface. The next network adapter we attach will be GE000, the next one 001, so on and so forth. And that's what we'll see here in our demonstration. So in our vSRX 1, we see that we have our externally connected network adapter, which is just our FXP0 interface. Then we have several more connected here. So this one would represent GE000, and this one would represent GE001. And those are the only interfaces we're concerned with right now. So referencing our diagram, GE000 on vSRX 1 will connect to vSRX 2, and 001 on vSRX 1 will connect to vSRX 3. So going back over to our VM settings, we'll connect 000 to vSRX 2 and 001 to vSRX 3. There we go. We just click apply. And you'll note that in Hyper-V, we can change this virtual switch mapping on our network adapters while the device is still turned on. You'll see later that in ESXi, we're not able to do that, that we need to turn the device off in order to adjust it. So on vSRX 2, we'll connect 000 to vSRX 1, and we'll connect 001 to vSRX 3. And we'll set up vSRX3 here as well, where 000 is connected to vSRX1 and 001 is connected to vSRX2. And apply. And there we go, that we now have our interfaces all set up and connected to our virtual switches. The last thing to do is to just go into our devices and configure those interfaces, make sure that OSPF comes up okay. So I'll go ahead and hop in and we'll get those interfaces and protocol configurations set, and then we'll come back and make sure that everything's working all right. Okay. And there we have it. So we went ahead and configured our GE000 and 001 interface on each of our vSRXs from Hyper-V, and we set our protocol configuration for OSPF area 0 and adding those two interfaces. Now you notice that I did this from Secure CRT, my terminal emulator that I had previously set up SSH access to our vSRXs. You could have just as easily done that from the console of Hyper-V as well if you would like. So let's hop back over to the vSRXs and take a look to make sure that OSPF is coming up as expected. All right, so we're here on vSRX3. If we do a show OSPF neighbor, and there we have it. We see that we've got the router ID of 10001 and 10002, and over both of our GE000 and 001 interfaces that we have our neighborships showing up there. Let's just do a show OSPF neighbor on the other vSRXs to be sure. And there we have it. Excellent. So this is how we set up our connections on Hyper-V, is we create a separate virtual switch for each link that we want to connect. And I usually like to name them with the two devices that they'll be connecting, and then connect them on the virtual network adapters for each virtual machine. Now, ESXi will work a little differently because we have this concept of port groups. So let's jump over to ESXi and take a look at how we configure it over there. So heading back over to our ESXi machine here, we've got vSRX 1, 2, and 3 configured here at the bottom. Now, the thing we have to do is very similar, is that we create separate virtual switches. However, we also need to create separate port groups then that connect to each of our virtual switches. So to create a virtual switch, you'll go over to your networking section, and then go to virtual switches. We'll go add standard virtual switch. So the same thing here, I'm going to name these for the devices that they're connecting. So vSRX1 to vSRX2, I like to set the MTU to the jumbo MTU, the jumbo frame size of 9,000, just to make sure that we don't run into any problems there. Let's go ahead and add, and we'll create two more of these here. vSRX1 to vSRX3, and set it to 9,000. And then vSRX2 to vSRX3, and also set that to 9,000. You don't necessarily have to set it to 9,000, but I like to make sure in case we're doing anything interesting that we're just not running into MTU issues. I really don't want to have to troubleshoot that. Now, once our virtual switches are created, we actually need to create a port group. So VMware is creating a blank switch with no ports on it at first. We just have a switch that has no interfaces on it that we can connect anything to. So now we're actually creating the group of ports. You can create a group of ports that will tag a certain VLAN or a group of trunk ports. Or, as we're going to do, we'll create a group of access ports, and they'll just connect into each of these virtual switches. So let's go on over. So we're going to add a port group. And we're going to do the same thing here of name these for the devices that they're connecting. So vSRX1 to vSRX2, and connect that to the vSRX1, vSRX2 virtual switch. And we'll do this for the other two as well. So vSRX1 to vSRX3 will connect to the vSRX1, vSRX3 virtual switch, and then vSRX2 to vSRX3 port group will connect to the 2 to 3 virtual switch. And there we have it. So now if we go over to our virtual machines, and first we've got vSRX1 here. We'll dismiss these notifications. We'll go to the actions and edit settings. And same thing here in VMware, is that our first interface will be our FXP0, our next one will be GE000, and next one GE001, and the next one added would be for 002, etc. So since we're on vSRX1, GE000 is going to connect to vSRX2. I've run into this a few times where the port group doesn't show up immediately. If we go ahead and just refresh the page, it should go ahead and show up. I think it's just a user interface refresh issue. So go down to vSRX1, actions, settings, and there we go. So vSRX1 to 2, and then 1 to 3, and we'll save. And we'll do that for our other two here as well. So for vSRX2, we'll connect 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. And then vSRX3, we'll go settings and connect 1 to 3 and 2 to 3. And there we go, and save. And then now let's boot these guys up. We'll be back in just a few moments once those boot up. And there we have it. Now we're all booted back up. So let's run over to our SSH here and connect. Now I've already configured the interfaces and OSPF for these. If we do a show configuration protocols, we see we've got OSPF area 0 configured with GE000 and 001. If I do a show configuration interfaces, we see we've got GE000 and 001, and it's very similar, of course, on SRX2 and 3 here. If we just do a show OSPF neighbor, we see we've got our two neighbors showing up and full here. If we just hop over to our others and double check there, there we go. And there we go. All right, so that's how we configure our advanced topologies in Hyper-V and ESXi. We just have to create a separate virtual switch to connect each of our interfaces for each of our point-to-point links that'll be connecting our devices. I appreciate you sticking with me to work through this. I hope that this video has been informative for you, and I would like to thank you for viewing.